Good morning. My name is Lori Gauthier. I'm the Interim Chair of Teaching and Learning at Cambrian. So I'm responsible for our Learning Center and also our Teaching and Learning Innovation Hub. It's an exciting time at Cambrian. We launched our Teaching and Learning Innovation Hub this semester. So the Hub is primarily responsible for supporting innovative ways of academic delivery. So this is a timely discussion for us to be having, a discussion about open education, open educational resources. So I'm going to take a minute to just introduce your presenters today. Jenny Heyman is here today. Jenny is a learning designer and works for higher education institutions as part of an ongoing practice and research. She currently works as a program manager with ECampus Ontario. In her work, she partners with educators to explore excellence in online and technology-enabled teaching and learning. Jenny is also working on her Doctor of Education in Leadership and Innovation. Her current research focuses sense-making and the use of open educational resources in post-secondary contexts. Joanne Kehoe is also with us today. Joanne is an instructional designer currently on secondment as a program manager with ECampus Ontario. In both roles, Joanne provides technological and pedagogical support to educators and learners around technology-enabled curriculum and online course design models. With over 19 years experience in various roles at McMaster University, she has a BA in Communication Studies and an MAd in Higher Education. We also have Jessica O'Reilly presenting today. Many of you already know Jess. Jess works in our Teaching and Learning Innovation Hub. She's our instructional developer. So her job there is to support academic delivery and use of technology for learning. And we have Laura Killam presenting today. Laura is a faculty member here at the college, and she'll be joining the Teaching and Learning Innovation Hub this fall as our first ever faculty secondment and innovation champion this fall. So both Jessica and Laura are also OE fellows, Open Education Fellows with ECampus Ontario. So without further ado, thank you again for coming. I think it's a very timely conversation to be having in light of the Innovation Hub and everything that we're trying to accomplish there, and is an interesting conversation. I think you're gonna be very excited with some of the stuff that we're gonna be talking about today. So I hope you have a good day, and I'll pass it off now to, I think, Joanne.
Okay, so we've gone through that. This is our agenda for the rest of our time together. And actually, when you were introducing me, I was thinking 19 years of experience. Oh my gosh! And I just got the email a few days ago that it's actually 20. And I'm like, oh my god, I got my 20 years. I can't believe it. I feel like I was just starting. I work normally at McMaster University, so I was just trying to find parking like a couple years ago. No. So I'm Joanne Kehoe, and I'm here. Yeah. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. You heard my professional life, and I'm currently working at ECampus, which is wonderful. I guess I'm a first-generation student, and my path through education was always kind of tempered with how am I going to pay for this, and how studying full-time, working full-time, trying to juggle everything. So I understand the struggle and the attractiveness of open educational resources for sure. So I'm here with my colleague Jenny Heyman, who has really helped guide me along my path to embracing open. I was in a position, as an instructional designer, working on course designs, trying to get things done really quickly. So sometimes you kind of forget why you're there. And when you're talking to the students afterward, you're like, okay, I really have to kind of look into this a little bit more and kind of reflect back on my practice. And so that the experience at eCampus has really helped do that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about ECampus Ontario, just some background, and tell you, first I'll start with what we're not. We're not a competitor by any means. We don't offer any certificate or accreditation type of programming. We're here for you. We're here to support the 45 publicly funded colleges and universities in Ontario, the educators and learners that are studying and working within them. And we have a lot of programs of support, and our focus is on open and technology-enabled teaching and learning practice and how to support growth in those areas. So we have this mantra of explore, engage, extend, and empower. So what we want to do is kind of explore things together with you, engage with one another on our collaborative programming and research, extend our capabilities, and then hopefully at the end we'll kind of come together as a more empowered group of individuals working in Ontario. But I really feel like we're at a really good cusp of that right now. So here's our website if you want to check it out. It kind of gets all of our info. If you just click one more time. You see that top thing in the top right corner is our newsletter. So if you want to keep on top of what's going on at ECampus Ontario, you click there and just add your name and your email, and you'll get a monthly, you won't get spammed, you'll get a monthly update of things that we're working on, things that we're kind of celebrating that others have worked on, and things like funding, which is kind of a cool thing to tap into. So that's where you also, from the learner perspective, you go to ECampus Ontario and we have this online course portal. So there sometimes is a misconception that we offer courses because you're able to search for courses there, but it's really for the learners to kind of find and navigate their way through the many, well, 16,000 plus online courses that are available in Ontario. So that's what we have on there. Each institution has a liaison that we work with to make sure that the portal information for their institution is up to date. And yeah, we get lots of traffic through our portal. So that's kind of the learner. If you go to our homepage and click on the learner end, you'll get to that course portal if you want to check it out. That's what it looks like. When we feature courses, that kind of rotates. Yep, keep going. So we also have, in addition to the portal, is all these program designs that we're working on. And they kind of tap into these three areas of rethinking. Rethinking the learning resources, rethinking the learning experience, and rethinking recognition of learning. And go. So if you click on the Educator part of our website, you get brought to this kind of four-cornered exploration. I'll start in the lower right with the EdTech Sandbox and move my way clockwise around. So the EdTech Sandbox is one of the projects that I oversee at ECampus Ontario. And I think Cambrian is involved in one of the Sandbox projects with Lobster, which is cool. You can go ahead. So there's our sandbox. Yeah, so there are three areas: open badges, virtual simulations, and experiential learning. So open badges is a partnership with CanCred, which is a Canadian open badging platform. And we selected them because all their data is housed in Canada. So if you're not familiar with open badges, is everybody familiar? Yeah. If you're not, you want help, I've learned a ton, because when I came to eCampus, I badged a course I teach at Mac incorrectly. It was like you've done this, so you get this. It had no information behind it. So an open badge has information behind it. So any of the badge earners, when they're showing it to potential employers, when they click on that link, it has all of the information that you see on the right, the metadata behind it telling what that badge means and what it represents. So if you want to explore any kind of forays into open badging, just give me a shout and I'll help you out. We can do a one-on-one Zoom or something. It's a pretty exciting area. I've really bought into it. Experiential learning, we partnered with Ripen, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with. Yeah, they recently got a bunch of funding from the Career Ready Fund, I think over $700,000. So I think we'll be hearing more about that, because I think that will drive the cost down for people who want to participate in that platform. So it's basically a platform that connects employers, students, and faculty, creating projects for their class to bring those three groups together so students can work on a more meaningful learning experience with an employer. And then the last of the sandbox is the virtual sims, the lobster, which is, oh yeah, and if you want to try it out, oh, you can't see that link that great. If you click again, maybe. Yeah, okay, so the top left link is tiny.cc/lobsterlab. It's a lab safety lab you can go through. It's fun. And like you can spill chemicals without hurting anyone. But if you want to explore all the labs, there's they're always adding labs. I think there was 40 the last time I checked, but if you follow their Twitter, they're always releasing new labs. You can go to the Lobster trial. There's a Google form, and I'll forward the name to Sam Butcher, who's our partner at Lobster, and he'll give you access to them for a month so you can play around with them. They're really great, and we're finding it's been a really good experience. It's an easy thing to integrate into courses for faculty, and students really enjoy it. We're getting good feedback. So the next thing I was going to briefly talk about, I'll talk about it more later in our open educational practices session, is the Ontario Extend program. Are there any people who are at the Northern, other than, that's where we kind of met the force of education, Jessica and Laura, back in August, we started with a northern consortium of colleges and universities, and we've since offered it in the east at Fleming. Is that east? Yes. I think the direction thing doesn't really make much. And then in the west, in Lambton and Sarnia a few weeks ago. So it's an, you can go ahead, yeah. So it's an online program. There's 6 modules of self-directed study, or if you can do it as a face-to-face, you can take the material that we've developed in the modules and offer it on site. Cambrian College has done that, and they've kind of adapted it to their own PD, faculty PD. Or you can do it as a collaborative study, which is what we did with the Extend East, Extend West groups. Everyone is moving through the modules together and supporting one another. And it's a domain of one's own project. If you're familiar with that, it's basically a home on the web for all the material and work that you're doing to showcase to people. And it's all openly licensed. So anything you see on there you want to use, adapt, put into your courses. What I like the most about Ontario Extend, it's not just a flat, you know, you're going through the modules, you're doing activities, you're kind of keeping it all to yourself. It's very open and sharey. So if you do an activity, you actually say you do an activity in one of your classes and you write about it and you say, this is how I set it up. This is the rubric I developed. You put it into what we call an activity bank. So you can see all the things that educators have worked on, see other examples that you can kind of use and consider for your own. So I'll talk about a little bit more about that later, but you can check it out at extend.ecampusontario.ca. It's based on this anatomy of a 21st century educator model from Simon Bates, who is at Simon Fraser, or is he at Simon and Simon? Or is he at UBC? I think he's out there. Yeah, I think he's AVP teaching and learning at UBC, if I'm right. Yeah. So he developed this and we adapted it for our context, and now we have actually also badged each of the modules so you can get an open badge. That's a bit about Extend. The next thing that we feature on our website and talk about a lot is our Ontario Open Textbook Library. So this is where you would find the open textbooks. There's over 245 titles available. If you're coming to the Pressbook session later, we're gonna kind of be searching for stuff there. So this is a great spot to explore. And if you go to the next slide, it's based on the BC Campus Open Textbook Library. It's actually a mirrored copy of what they've developed. So you have the ability to find the textbook that you want to use, adopt, or adapt for your own context. Yeah, so these are the 3 things you can do. So you can adopt, you can kind of take it right from scratch, use it in your class. You can adapt, you can make it more contextualized for your students. Maybe take 3 of 5 chapters out of one book, 4 of 6 of another, mix it up, add some things in. Or you can go, like I think I like what Terry Green always talks about. You can dip your toe in with your adopt, or you can go full on cannonball and create your own open textbook, which is a lot of work, but we kind of embrace the sprint methodology, which can kind of help get through it quickly. So basically this open license allows you to have this control over the content that you're supplying to your students. You can customize it, you can localize it to your particular geographical location, you can personalize it with some notes from you and update it, and maybe include, like we just worked on a business text sprint with educators from Southwestern Ontario, and we updated it with Canadian content. It was there were 2 American texts. So translate it into another language, and again, remix it like I was talking about. And this is kind of what Jenny will be talking about a little bit more. And then there also is not just the textbook, it's other things that go along with that. There's the ancillary resources, as we all know, the question banks, the activities, the slides. We have a really great project from history faculty at Western and York, yeah, who have developed an open history reader. So it accompanies a Canadian post-Confederation history textbook, open textbook, and they've developed this reader which has lots of digitized archival content and activities for the students to do to kind of replace what an existing, I think it was a $40 or $50 reader that they had to buy to do in their tutorials. So it's really wonderful to kind of check out. And if you come, I'll provide the link later in the Pressbook session if you want to check it out. And then we also have had many funding opportunities. And that's how I came to first know ECampus Ontario, because as an applicant for that funding, to do some online course design work and development of communities of practice, and also doing an open textbook. So we have had things, new programming, research and innovation funding, and open initiatives. There's lots of, on our website, there are lots of the kind of background information on each of the projects. And Jenny and I and other program managers, Peggy French and Terry Green, have been working on building relationships with each of the project leads for the programs that were funded, talk about how it's going, the lessons learned, how the collaborations have gone, and then also feature some of the great stuff that has been created. So, yep. And because we have heard about all this great stuff that's being created and lots of people don't know about it, you just kind of hear about it at conferences and stuff, we are building a spot to put them. So that's one of our plans for the coming years, to have this online repository for the OER that has been developed with our Ontario partners. And we also have the Student Experience Design Lab, which is run by Chris Fernland, who's a wonderful colleague at eCampus. So this is groups of students who have gone through trying to identify challenges in their education and how they can come up with a tech-enabled solution to that. And I was lucky enough to be an evaluator of the projects, because I think there were 6 in total that were developed, and only 3 are able to be funded. They're like amazing. They blew me away. The prototypes were like the best prototypes I've ever seen, and I worked with, you know, consulting companies that have developed prototypes. I was like, these are so good. So it'd be really great to see the work that comes out of their lab. The road ahead. I mentioned the funding, the repository that's coming up, but we also have other things coming up that you'll be interested in. Our strategic plan, if you want to take a boo, it's on our website, and it's not a huge read, but it kind of gives you an idea of what we're working on. And because we're here for you, we want you to read it and give us feedback on it. So these are the 3 strategies that we're going to be working on throughout the coming years: leading through open and collaborative practices, building capacity through shared and collaborative services, and then innovation through investment in research. And the RFPs are coming soon. I don't know the exact date, but just so you know, and it's going to be soon, probably. I think mid-June was what I heard most recently, but we'll be announcing those on our Twitter, as well as through the newsletter and various channels. So we'll be having funding available in creating OER in open emergent fields, such as trades and technology, experiential learning, virtual simulations, ZCred, if you're familiar with that, which is a complete credential that has no cost for their materials. And as well as there'll be an RFP category for scholarship of teaching and learning. So the research projects that support, you know, we are all kind of blown away when we look at VR, for example, but we want some good research that says this is really helping the learners and helping them engage better and perform better. So if you think about things that you want to test out, if you can think of a research project to go along with it, that would be definitely fit into that category. And then there's, Stars and Rainbows, EdTech Sandbox 2.0. So we have this sandbox with the badges, the experiential learning, and the virtual sims. But we're also thinking about what other EdTech technologies can we test out? What perhaps is something that we can look at as a shared service? I'm trying to think. So right now we're having a survey developed, which will go out to all of our 45 partners, teaching and learning centers, and CIOs who they have identified on their campuses that would be able to give feedback on what technologies. So an example might be Kaltura. Video streaming is something that we all kind of are interested in. How could we scale that so we can bring the costs down for institutions? So we'll have that survey developed probably over the next month or so, and then it'll be distributed, and we'll get feedback on it and try to come up with the best candidate technologies are for Sandbox 2.0. And also coming up in the fall is our technology-enabled seminar and showcase. It's on November 12th and 13th. at the Globe and Mail Center. I don't know how many people have attended TESS. No, oh, it's so fun. Oh, yeah. Is that a Monday and a Tuesday? Yeah.
It's a Monday, Tuesday, so
Yeah.
Tuesday's the core of it. It only comes for one day.
Yeah, it's a good showcase of what people have been working on, and it's a great networking opportunity.
Well, you attend that if you get received funding for the development course or whatever.
Should you attend it?
Is that what that is?
Well, actually, this year's the first year that we're doing a call for proposals.
No, I developed a course on those.
Oh, did you come to Toronto? Oh, so you might have been there. It might have been called something different. I think last year it was called TESS for the first time, and previous years it was ECampus Showcase or something. Yeah. Yeah. So we're holding it annually, but this is the first year we're going to actually send out a call for proposals to get people to. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then I was just going to I steal this from Jenny. This is Jenny's line. But citation Jenny Heyman. Open is an invitation. Anything that we work on at eCampus is an invitation. You can join, you can collaborate, we can learn together. We're here, like I said at the beginning, we're here for you, and it's no pressure to do anything you don't want to do. We are inviting you in to kind of explore this together. And that's my spiel. So I think Jenny will talk about another program that we have worked on, which is fabulous, which is the Open Education Fellows.
Great. Hi, good morning. So as Joanne said, we are program managers at ECampus Ontario. My name is Jenny Heyman. My role as a program manager, one of the things that I really get to do and love to do is to try and support the building of open community in Ontario for all 45 institutions as much as I can, as often as I can, seeing people face to face and by Zoom webinar, among other things. One of our programs is called the Open Rangers, which started last March 2017. We had what was called the Open Education Ontario Summit, and we had about between 60 and 80 participants come to Toronto and spend an entire day learning about what open education is, how it might work for them on their campuses, and we dubbed those people who attended it the Open Rangers. And there are, so Jess, I think just you, Jess, from Cambrian was the Open Ranger who attended that last March, and here she is now rolling along. But we have people on many of the campuses who have this role, Open Rangers. They tend to be open advocates who are already somewhat knowledgeable about open and want to be their campus advocate. So we try and meet with them once every month or once every 6 weeks to talk about how it's all going and support them in any way we can. The second thing that we did this year, starting in January, we had an application process for 6 open education fellows. And what we felt we needed with those fellows were willing volunteers who could do some research here in Ontario about the use of open and the value of open for both colleges and universities. So we have, as I say, we have 6, 2 of whom are from here at Cambrian. So Jessica and Laura are both open education fellows. We have one from Laurentian, Erin Langle, never sure I'm saying that right. Maureen Glynn is at Ryerson University. She's an instructional designer. And Helen DeWard from Lakehead, she is a pre-service teacher, candidate teacher in digital literacies, and a really great open person on Twitter and on the internet. And James Skidmore, who's a professor of German studies at University of Waterloo. And so what they do with us in partnership, they're increasing their professional development about what open education is. They're doing these research projects. And Laura and Jess are going to tell us a little bit more about what that is specifically. So I'll turn it over to Laura to tell us about her experience.
Good morning. I know a lot of you in the room sort of know who I am, but for those of you that don't, or for those of you that are joining virtually that I may not know, my name's Laura. I teach in the Bachelor of Science in Nursing program here at Cambrian College. Lori just told you that soon I'll be also joining the hub to promote innovation. And I see open education as something that is innovative, as Lori mentioned. And there are different types of innovation. I see this as something that is a disruptive form of innovation because it changes the way that we do things. No longer are we having, if we're using these open educational resources, to stay behind the walls that big publisher textbooks have set up for us. There are some questions that need to be answered and some discussions that we need to have, I think, here on campus about the impact and the potential that open education has. There is evidence out there, and I mean, just logically, if you think about it, if you give a student a free book, well, chances are they're more likely to use it, right? So, duh, the research says that students like free stuff. Students are more likely to access free stuff. I don't think that's, you know, very groundbreaking information. But when you think about how that extends to other things, it actually helps student retention and success in courses. There's evidence to suggest that students who are using open educational resources are not only more likely to be successful, but they're more likely to take more courses at your institution because then they have the money from those books that they've saved to spend on that kind of thing. So when you start thinking about it beyond just this is a free textbook or this is a free thing that I'm using, well, then there's a whole bunch of things that I think that we need to explore. Engaging in the open movement or the open community is an ongoing learning process. I'm a newbie, so I am exploring all kinds of questions. One of the questions that I'm exploring through the research that I'm hopefully going to engage in, and if I get any participants, is the use of open educational resources in accredited healthcare programs. Because when we look at accreditation and sort of the attitudes that I would argue are potentially biased and unjust towards the use of something that's free, because sometimes we think that maybe there's no quality built into that, in an accredited program is an interesting thing to look at. But then we have our accrediting body, so for us, CAS and the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing, I think I'm saying that right. Anyways, whoever our accreditors are that come here and tell us whether or not we can deliver the program, they actually suggest using open educational resources on their website. So I'm hoping that for us it's not an issue, but depending on what your accrediting body's view of open educational resources are, it may or may not be an issue. As I'm engaging in this, I am hoping to do more creation of open educational resources, and I would suggest that maybe you're not licensing them as Creative Commons, but if you come to the Open Educator session, you may find out, like I did when I was at the Extend Institute that was mentioned earlier, that you're already kind of an open educator. I mean, how many of us share the things that we create with other teachers to make their lives easier? This is kind of just doing that on a larger scale. And so when I look at open education, I really think that it fits with our core values here at Cambrian College, because it is innovative. And it is trying to promote greater good, especially if we're focused on student success. It promotes collaboration, not only across the colleges, but across various institutions. And being at OE Global and seeing the potential of what can happen when we work together across institutions was amazing. In the Netherlands, they have 17 universities co-creating resources. They have a platform where they log in, and they actually have a peer review process, and they have like, it's kind of built off traffic lights, like how good is this resource according to the peer review. So there is definitely potential either through ECampus Ontario or through other means to have a peer review process built in, which I think is one of the big concerns that people have when they first think of open. They think, well, are you talking about like Wikipedia where everybody can just do whatever they want? And not exactly. And I think that if we look at the research around that, it has potential to promote excellence across the college. And if you're sharing openly, you're a little bit more accountable maybe for what you're putting out there, right? So a couple of the things that I've been doing, and sorry, Catherine, I didn't ask you if I could use this picture before I did. But Catherine and I participated in badging, right? It is online. We created a website when we presented this at Advancing Learning. I think it was last week. I'm starting to lose track of time. And we shared our experiences openly. We put that on a website. And in the future, we're looking at open badges and the potential that that might have for our students to go out to employers and say, look, I've earned this badge, which means I've done all this stuff. And so some institutions are looking at open badging in that way. And so that's something that we're hoping to explore in the future. The other thing that I've been dabbling in, next, would be blogging. So I'm very new to blogging. At first, I wasn't sure how I was going to like this thing, but the Extend Institute that I went to also pushed me there. And this is more of an open reflective practice, which I don't know how many people actually read my blog, but I've gotten some comments that, you know, sometimes it's helpful to do that kind of thing. And as I'm moving to I'm not sure if I should call it feedback focused assessment or ungrading, engaging with the community and writing blogs about my thought process around that is very helpful for helping me work through that kind of thing. And so, I mean, if you're interested, it's insights.nursekillam.com. And my name is Nurse Killam on social media. So that's kind of how that makes sense. And that's all that I had, Jess. Thank you.
All right, you hear me okay? Sounds like it. So I'm just going to take the bit of time that I have to tell you my story about how I ended up here today. And it started back in March of 2017 at that event that Jenny referenced. So Marnie, if you want to go ahead. So this is kind of how it played out. Sonia calls me down to her office and she says, hey, Jess, you want to go to Toronto for this thing? I'm like, well, what thing might it be? And she said, I don't really know, but there's only so many spots available. It's happening soon. So if you're interested, go find out, tell me what it is about, and if it makes sense for us here at Cambrian. So I thought, I like conferences, I like Toronto, I like shopping, so I'm going to go down there. And they basically blew my mind. Go back one. I'm not gesticulating at you. I'm just gesticulating generally. So I'm down at the event, and it starts off with a keynote much like this. So we're in an amphitheater, and there's two presenters there. One's name is Rajiv, and he's a psych prof from BC. And BC is ahead of the game when it comes to this stuff. So he's already done a lot of this work. The other person on stage was named Robin, and she is an American Lit professor down in the States. And the two of these open educators have really been collaborating and talking online. And so they're giving a presentation that starts really with a focus on cost savings and open education resources like the textbooks that Jenny and Joanne were sharing. But then they turn the conversation into something else, and not just cost savings, but issues such as access and empowerment, collaboration, engagement. These kind of concepts come up, and Jenny will elaborate on all of them next. So I'm sitting there in the audience and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this makes such great sense to me. I'm currently completing my 5th university degree. I keep going back for more and more. But there are things about university education that really frustrate me. And the biggest thing, especially in undergrad, was the obligation to buy these huge anthologies written on like tissue paper, 6-point font, basically see-through. And I'd haul them up from the pit. I don't know if anyone else went to Laurentian and remembers that pit. So I was too cool for a backpack back then, so I'd have my one shoulder bag, and I'd drag it up the mountain, plunk that textbook on the table, and I'd basically read, 100 pages of the 1,000 in there? So over time, I started to resent this obligation more and more. And by 3rd year, I wasn't buying the books anymore because I was finding the stuff online. And I don't feel good about that because it wasn't open. I don't believe that it was, appropriate in terms of copyright, but I could find it, and as a student, that's all I needed to, access and read the stuff. At least I was reading it, right? And this is at a time when Facebook and Wikipedia and YouTube are all becoming things. And so now all of a sudden sharing scanned copies of textbooks is also becoming a thing, and it's the thing I chose. So what really excited me about this idea is the philosophy underpinning it. The concept that maybe students should have another choice. So they can choose not to buy the book at all. They can choose to buy it and just eat the cost and deal with it as they will. They can choose to find the pirated stuff like I did. Or now, they don't have to make that moral dilemma, right? They can actually choose open as an option if their educators allow them, if it's appropriate, if it's available. So there's all of these ifs still in place, But what these people are doing in the open community is asking the right questions and thinking about, well, what could this mean? Not just for student access, but also for student empowerment. So when you start using open stuff, it's open, not closed. You can edit it, which means they can edit it. You can remix it, which means they can remix it. And so now there's this laundry list of open education practices that are turning education not into, you know, the rote, passive, consuming knowledge thing that we all see every day, unfortunately, and, you know, leave students kind of half asleep when they leave our lectures. It can be something else, and it can be something exciting. We don't really know what it's going to be yet. It's emerging, it's changing, but for me, it was like a light bulb moment, and I wanted to dial in. So I jumped in with both feet. I started tweeting. Like I'm not a Twitter user, but after this conference, when no one's handing out business cards anymore, they're giving me their Twitter handle. I'm like, okay, I guess Twitter's a thing that I should be doing. Well, as soon as I got on there, all of a sudden I'm connecting to all these people who are already walking this walk. Then eCampus puts out a call for their OE fellows, and I thought, what a great opportunity. All I need to do is put my hand up and say, I'm interested and I'm willing to work. And what they gave me back was all kinds of new community, as well as opportunities to do a 24-hour webathon, get on Terry's podcast as if I have something meaningful to say. But we filled the hour, so that's great. They flew us across the world, and we went to a 3-day open education global conference in the Netherlands. It's something I never would have had the opportunity to do. And now I get the sense of what they're doing in Europe and the States, California in particular. And they're so far ahead of where we are here. It's new, it's ground floor here in Ontario, but it's not so new out there. And how great that it's working. For me, it was proof of concept. These people are doing this thing and it's working well, and wow. So I thought, I need to bring this conversation back here. I have to start talking about this on campus. And I've been putting feelers out. People are coming to me, faculty are asking about open textbooks as an option, open badging, other concepts. Maybe not necessarily with the language of open that we're going to learn today, but we're already doing this, or at least hearing rumors of, and starting to ask questions. So this is our first official open day at Cambrian. I hope it won't be the last, and I hope that what it does for you all is trigger just some ideas that you're going to take back, let percolate over the summer, talk to your colleagues about, and hopefully the conversation will continue. So for me, what's next is a lot of research. I'm currently completing a doctorate in distance education, and open will definitely be a focus area for me. I'm hoping that all of this reading and learning and communicating that I'm doing will infuse itself into my work, because I think that the philosophy of open perfectly aligns with what we're trying to do in the hub. Like the hub is about community and collaboration, empowerment, learning, trying out. It's innovation, right? We're trying to make it better. And I'm not trying to suggest that there's anything wrong right now, but it's that continuous pursuit of, well, what's next? What could it be? Let's try it, that the hub's doing and the open's doing. And how lovely that we can connect not just with each other, but with a whole global network of educators who are doing this, walking this walk, talking this talk. So stay tuned. I don't have, a clear mission statement for you, because sometimes open leads you down paths that you don't anticipate or expect. But I'm really excited about it. I'm so glad that you're all here listening and thinking about what this could mean for you. And yeah, let's keep the conversation going. So I'll hand it over to Jenny now, and she's gonna give us a quick rundown of what is this thing called open. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Jess. And really, you covered all my points, so I could just sit back.
You're welcome.
Awesome, love it. And what's really exciting about that for me is that this is fairly new for Jess. It's fairly new for Laura, right? Saying that they're newbies, except that the reason that we're attracted to it is because it's stuff they're already doing in their practice. They were already open educators. They didn't define it like OER. They didn't have these formal definitions for it, but they're just, in spirit, they're open. And as so many teachers are. I got into teaching because I love students. I want to share what I know. So there's a lot about that is completely relevant to open. And Joanne shared my open as an invitation line with you, and that's not unique, but what it means for me is that there's no requirement for people to be open. If it's not appropriate for your discipline, not appropriate for your accreditation, if it's not your personal style, if you are risk averse, if you're not ready to be out there in the ways that so many people in open community are, it's just an invitation. And it can feel like, when people talk about open, it can feel a little bit culty. The open movement is a thing and you really have to join in. It's really not something that you have to join. Hopefully we frame it nicely as an invitation. So while I'm walking through, I encourage you to take some notes and think of some questions. We're gonna leave time for questions, hopefully. If I can speak well and concisely, we'll have time for questions, because this generates a lot of questions. What if, what happens, what? And we're gonna talk in a couple of sessions today as well about that. Next one. So before we get rolling too far, not everyone has seen definitions of open education, of open educational resources, open educational practices. This is the big picture. What is open education? It can be so many things. Sometimes we think of open education as MOOCs, these free courses. We're giving away higher education. We're all gonna be out of a job next week. So this is kind of that big idea of it: resources, tools, practices that are free of legal, financial, and technical barriers. So if someone clicks on the internet, and this has been true for quite a while, they can probably find out some information and learn something. So this is not new, but this is just a little bit of a formal definition of that one. Open educational resources. So this is teaching, learning, research materials, and I apologize for reading from a slide, but these formal definitions are sometimes helpful to really frame what it is. Digital or otherwise, one of the things we often don't know about open educational resources is they don't have to be digital. You can print out a worksheet, you can print out your slide deck. Students can print physical copies of open textbooks if they want to. They can print a chapter if they need it. Sometimes with our publisher resources, this is problematic. With open resources, it's pretty easy. So they can be analog, they don't have to be digital. Residing in the public domain or using open licenses. We're going to hear a little bit about Creative Commons licenses today, which is kind of the standard for open licenses. Marty's going to talk with you, and Cable Green of Creative Commons. So that's really exciting, he's fun. And then that permits no cost access. So when we talk about the cost factor and access for students to resources that are not as expensive, that's really where we're going, is no cost if we can do it. For sustainability reasons, the open community is talking a lot about how we're going to sustain these creation of these resources. There may be a low cost in the future to ensure that we can maintain them. Adaptation. This is the empowerment factor for educators. You can take a resource that's not completely contextual to your learner's needs or to your local context, and you can change it. Pull it into your LMS, start typing, you can do it, because you don't have to ask anyone's permission if it's an open resource. The William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, that was on the bottom of the slide, they are a foundation in the US, but they're global, and they fund millions of dollars and millions of resources that are open. So people are being appropriately compensated for the creation of these resources. They're not doing it out of their goodwill. There's a lot of foundation funding. There is ECampus Ontario funding for the creation of these resources where the need is greatest. Open educational practices, and this is what Jess was talking about with the philosophy of open. And again, these are things that you're already doing as educators. What can support the use of OER are institutional policies that empower educators to create OER, and again, that you're appropriately compensated fiscally or by time to create them. Promoting innovation pedagogical models. So Jess is working on what we call renewable assignments, where instead of a student writing an essay that only the student and the instructor ever see and gets thrown away essentially, that students start to build on each other's work, that they do project-based work, that they post to blogs, they keep a portfolio. So these are types of open practices that lead to students collaborating, building on each other's work. And then learners as co-producers. And so we're talking a lot right now in the open movement about trust in terms of learner capabilities, because we often think, oh, they don't know anything, they're coming to us, they know nothing. Well, we know that's not true, right? They do know a lot of things, they have a lot of capabilities, they have things to teach us. One of the things I love about being a teacher is that I learn from students every single time I walk and talk with them, right? So they have so much to offer. If we start respecting them as co-producers, ask them to create these open resources with us, that's part of open educational practice. So there's a good picture of me. I want to tell you a little bit about my story because it's why I'm an open educator. So this is me when I'm 8. I was a child of the 70s. TV was huge. Disco was huge. I grew up on Long Island, and I had an older sister. I had a younger sister and 2 younger brothers. So we're a big Irish Catholic family, lower middle income. My parents both graduated high school. But these are the things that happened in my path as a first-generation graduate that I think matter and why I'm an open educator. So I'll go through the list. So mom left us, tricky. My older sister had just had a baby, and so she and I were actually kind of the caregivers in the house because my dad went back and forth from Manhattan every day. So he went on the train every day. I graduated high school at 16 just because I had to hurry up because my family had needs. I went to community college when I was 17, my first year. I was so excited. I was going to school for music. So I'm a musician, among other things. But I couldn't stay the second year. I couldn't afford it. Went back to work. While I was working that year, lost my dad. So we're like, oh, what next? I was able to afford, because he had insurance money, thanks Dad, to go to school for a year at Berklee College of Music in Boston, which again, such a great experience. Couldn't afford to finish. Couldn't afford to complete it for costs. Worked for a few years on Long Island, decided to move out to Indiana so that I could get state tuition. I grew up in the States, right? I'm a good dual citizen now. I've been in Canada for equal number of years. I was in the States for 26 years and Canada for 27 years now. I had to work for a few years and then live in Indiana to get state tuition, because that's what I could afford. Waited tables 20 hours a week, like many students do, worked really hard. One of the best music schools in the country in the United States. So not only working hard, but being held to an extremely rigorous standard in terms of my coursework. I had to do all the same coursework as classical students. I was a jazz singer, which everyone is like, oh, jazz singers, you got the easy life. I'm like, oh, no, I don't. Even at that time, and this was late 80s, early 90s, the cost of textbooks every semester would crush me. I was like, I'm not ready for that. It's the last thing that I planned for, because I'm not a good financial planner, as many young people are not. So that, even at that time, was tricky. But I got to be a first-generation graduate, which was my goal, and I was so persistent and so resilient and so insistent that that happened. It happened. Fast forward some number of years later. There's the 4 main food groups for the undergraduate student, typically. Noodles, water, white toast, and apples. Those were my staples. The reason I waited tables, and I think the reason a lot of students wait tables, is because there's a meal involved. Usually if I'm on a shift waiting a table, I probably get a decent meal. So the point of my story, the point of my lived experience, the reason I'm an open educator is because I have such great empathy for students because of my experience. We rarely know what's happening in our students' private lives. They don't want to tell us. We don't usually want to know. We don't usually have time. We're in class, we're teaching, we're all busy. They're taking multiple courses. So we really know what's really going on in their lives. But we make a lot of assumptions. I hear a lot of assumptions. Oh, their parents are paying for it, they can afford the textbooks. You name it, there's a lot of assumptions. If they can afford a phone, they can afford textbooks. I hear them a lot. But in my world, if you're going to make any assumption at all about your students' lives, assume that they are under some sort of personal stress, and we hear a lot about mental health, and assume that finance is hard for them. Those are the first 2 assumptions that I make about students. For students for whom that's not true, they don't need as much help from me as an instructor. For students for whom that is true, they need as much help as I can give them. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of help I can give them. The cost angle is the most often the conversation about open goes to cost, because it's easy to measure. It's easy to say, you know, the evil thing over here is the expensive textbook. The white knight is the open textbook. It's not as simple as that, but it's one of the easy ways. So I took a look at education cost at Cambrian. Just checking your website, and this is just a basic, easy math. So for your domestic students, $4,500 for 2 semesters, fees included, $8,000 for 8 months of living, which is food, rent, those kinds of things. That's probably an underestimate, I'd guess. Some of you are better at this than me, but just based on the 2018, 2019 information on your website, that's what it costs fiscally. And there are lots of good supports for that, I know, for a student to be here. Never mind bureaucratically what it takes for them to walk through the door. Applications, first generation, don't have any idea how this works. That they walk through your doors in your classrooms is pretty amazing. International students, wow, are they getting hammered? Rightly so, not rightly so. I know that our funding model in Ontario is not friendly for what we need from them. But they're spending twice as much to be here, generally speaking. And again, this does not account for what it costs to travel back and forth from where they live, and the other kind of challenges that they're facing. And the third category, and this is just kind of average costs, textbooks per semester times 2 semesters. BC, in British Columbia, they've done some student research and survey research to find out, is this about average? It's about average. Also at University of Guelph in the fall of 2016, same research. University tends to be a little more expensive, but these are kind of the average costs. What? This column C, oh, go back, thanks. Column C is kind of the only area over which any of us have some control as educators. Column A, column B, nothing I can do about that really. Where I might have some control as an educator is what is the cost of the things that they need for my course. And again, invitationally, you don't always have control of that either, but where we can, we can try. Thanks, Jess. So this is the data from BC Campus, from Rajiv Jangani, and Rajiv gets talked about in the open world so much. If you ever have a chance to see Rajiv's keynote, it's 9 times better than mine. But he's done some research, recent research in BC. Same idea, we're seeing the same numbers come from the United States, times tens of thousands of students there. Half of them don't purchase a textbook at all. 30% earn a poor grade in the course. They take a hit because they can't afford it. Not because they don't care, not because they don't think textbooks are valuable, it's because they can't afford them. They take fewer courses. They won't register for a specific course because word gets around. That course, that elective has got a $300 textbook, don't take it. And they drop or withdraw from a course when they find out, because it's often a surprise behind the learning management system hiding in your course syllabus, what the cost of that textbook actually is. So what happens is a student will pay $500 for textbooks that immediately have a value of $20 on resale at the bookstore. Can you imagine if there was anything else you invested in that had that kind of loss of value immediately? Like that. They can't afford them, and there's lots of good surveys that say it's not just because they're being stubborn. They failed to see the value of this textbook, and the internet happened. I can't put it back, it totally happened. A student will say, and you will hear this a lot, I can find this on the internet. If I want to learn about introductory biology, I tell you what, I can find it on the internet. Why should I come to school? Why should I have educators? We hear it a lot. This is the information from Guelph. The most fun part, and again, it's really so similar. 50% not buying, or haven't bought for at least one course. The number that I love on this slide is 4,240 students bothered to fill out a survey at University of Guelph. That's a huge number of students. I've never seen a student survey with that many responses. It was about textbook costs, and they were all in. Their student government said, you need to fill this out, we need to hear it, we need to learn about it. I was so excited to see that. And then here again, they do understand the value of a textbook, right? We think they don't care, they don't want to read. They understand the value of the textbook. What it boils down to at the end of the day is that they really can't afford them. They haven't planned for it, and they can't afford them. So we're seeing some really great research from the States by this group, Fisher, Hilton, Wiley, Robinson. You can mix them up and rearrange the order. They're doing a ton of good research. What they're doing is experimental research. One group of students gets the publisher textbook. They pay for it as researchers because they know the students are going to buy them. So everyone has the publisher textbook over here. Everyone over here is using an open educational resource. So they test them at the beginning to make sure there's equal levels of knowledge. They're equal demographically. They've done this times around 48,000 students at different institutions. Same thing. Course completion is higher with those who have OER. Number of students with a higher final grade is better. Overall course grade, and what they're also seeing, program retention is higher. Students will take more courses because they can afford to and finish faster. So that's really important information. So making sense of OER, I make sense of it because of my background, my lived experience. I make sense of it because I look at these costs and I think it really is sensible for me in my discipline. I teach education. In my discipline, to use open resources of all kinds. Whether or not it makes sense to you depends on your situation. But one of the things that we really want to talk about, other than cost, is the idea of choice and power. So remember I said the internet happened, and it's completely changed higher education. There is no longer information scarcity. You are no longer the only expert in the world in your area of expertise. There's tons of information out there. I haven't turned to a textbook, except I'm taking doctoral studies. I still have to buy textbooks. Oh. I said to my professor, do you understand what I'm researching, what I'm doing here? You're really making me buy a $40 textbook? I still have to buy them, but it's not the place I turn to learn something. If I need to learn something, I go to YouTube first. I go to the internet first. I Google it. I go to Wikipedia as my first stop to get a sense of something that I need to learn. So my habits have changed. And again, I was a child of the 70s, but my habits have changed. You can imagine how much your students' habits have changed on this front. So if information is nearly free, easy to find, abundant, we have to start rethinking our value as educators. What is it that we bring to the table when a student pays tuition and comes to our institution that is more than information? We support them, we facilitate, we curate, we teach them these skills so that they can be lifelong learners. Get them curating, finding resources, evaluating quality, understanding good quality from bad, fake news from not fake news. We give them feedback. We talk about our experiences as practitioners. Those are all the things we now bring to the teaching and learning process that we've always brought that have value outside of content. The content in our heads is not the thing of value. There are other things, our practices, our collaboration, those are the things that are going to start to have more and more value as we go along. So what do these open resources empower? For you as educators, selection, millions of resources on the internet that are specifically labeled open. You can use them, you don't need permission. You can use them as is. You don't have to adapt them. If it's good enough, close enough, you can surround it with your teaching and your feedback, good enough. Never having to ask permission. They're already licensed. I don't have to write a letter to Library of Congress and ask their permission. Never have to worry about breaking the law. This is really such a concern for educators. I'm slapping these images into my PowerPoints, but I'm a little nervous. Can I do it? Can I not do it? Sharing your work and the work of others with colleagues. So now we're talking about collaboration. And we tend to work in individual silos. We tend to work in competitive environments, even in public education in Ontario. What I know here at Cambrian, I can't share with Lambton because they'd steal my students. Not sure that's as true in college systems where students tend to be somewhat local. You can adapt them to your local context and your students' local needs. So a lot of these resources that are out there are US-centric or Europe-centric. They're not made for Canada, for Ontario. You can adapt them. You can mix them up in ways that meet your design needs. How often have you said, I just want the 3 chapters from this textbook, just want 3 chapters from this textbook. I wish somebody would make a textbook that just has those 6 chapters. With open educational resources, you can make a textbook with those 6 chapters. And then this teaching your students, having them as your co-creators, how to find these resources. This speaks to your institution's mission and vision. 5 will get you 10, so there's something in your mission and vision about 21st century learning skills, critical thinking skills. This is all that. It's a way to deliver on it. And then making a sense of OE, you already are, right? So I talked about this, you're already an open educator. Whether you call it that, you don't call it that. You're finding stuff on YouTube, you're finding internet resources to share with your students. Good examples from practice. People are posting blogging articles all the time. Here's top 10 tips for business. It's all on the internet, it's really great. Using YouTube videos. Again, YouTube, I learned so much from YouTube. Fix my dishwasher using YouTube, great. Primary digital resources, if you're in kind of history or any kind of archival practice, you can take a look at primary resources that have been digitized, artworks that have been digitized. A controversial artwork is a super conversation starter in any class. Here's this thing that I saw on the internet. Let's talk about it, right? It's an open resource and it's an open practice. We're gonna have dialogue about this crazy thing I saw. Government data, government resources. We use this a lot in health. We use it a lot in political science, other disciplines. Asking your students to build portfolios, open practice, where again, your mission and vision as an institution is to get them jobs and get them walking out the door. Your assignments can help them build their portfolios, and their blogs can help them reflect. They need to think about what they're learning, how they're learning it, just for their own information to see their progress from one portfolio class to another portfolio class. How does it look? And the last thing, the thing that I want to leave you with, so we've talked about how open might make sense for you, told you about how it makes sense for me. When we start to talk administratively about how it makes sense, for large groups of faculty members collaborating, how it makes sense, we take a look at Kwantlen Polytechnic. So in the big US, they're not there, they're out in BC. The big US, they have these things called Z degrees, and they're getting funded with millions of dollars of foundation funding. It's nice to have so much foundation funding in the US. But they are full degrees at community colleges, community college level, that have no textbooks or no extra costs. All the resources are open. And they are sharing, the people who are building these open educational resources with all this funding are sharing them. So there's repositories we're going to talk about later at the community college level. So Kwantlen Polytechnic, again, Rajiv Jangani's involved, have gone through and decided they're going to try one of these. We're calling it Z-Cred because this is Canada. We can't call them Z degrees. Right, starting in fall 2018, 350 sections using OER, 100 instructors are on board to try this with administrative support, including funding and technology support. 30 departments, 10,000 students, $1 million in student savings. So from an institutional point of view, Kwantlen Polytechnic is looking pretty good to students, right? And I don't like to use open as an institutional branding opportunity, but I think for Kwantlen Polytechnic, it is in a lot of ways because they're talking about this. So this is how these ideas come together, where the instructors aren't losing their jobs because of open education. They're being supported to create it with SWIFT or with funding. And it's leading to this kind of access for students. So saving this cost, they still have to pay tuition. We're still talking about a tuition-based context. We're not giving away this education, but we're using resources in that column C where we can focus and where we have some level of control about how open can work for us as educators. And that's all I wanted to talk with you about. And each of us looks forward to answering any questions you might have. How much time do we have for that, Jess? Oh, that's not bad. Great. Questions?
All of the assurance processes, you have in place with partners that create the content that goes on the website.
Okay, great. So I'll repeat that one. So the question is, what quality assurance process do we, and I'm assuming ECampus Ontario for the moment, what quality assurance processes do we have around the types of things people are creating with our funding? The answer right now is 0. So we are empowering institutions to increase their own capacity to ensure that the things that they create conform with accessibility guidelines, are good quality representations in their discipline, have been checked thoroughly, have been tested with students ideally. If we can get a round of at least one run of a course, if it's an online course, to see how the students feel about it, to improve it a little bit. Those are all the kinds of things we like to see, but we're not doing quality assurance. We may be, as we add things to the Ontario repository that we're building, we may take a look at some of the features of the things we're putting in there to ensure it, but it's not our area of expertise, and it's not, I mean, we're pretty good at it, but we don't have the staffing set in place for it yet. So I would love to see some quality assurance because it's a really critical part of sharing those resources. Peer review will also be a process. When we have a repository, anyone in your discipline can take a look at those resources and determine for themselves whether or not it's quality for the students they're teaching, and can share their opinions, so we'll have peer review. Other questions? That's a quiet group. Any questions from over here? Nothing online? Okay. Great, we covered it all. It's all really super clear. Go ahead.
You have to become a formal member of ECampus Ontario in order to access it, or can you come in as a one-time user and just come in when you want?
You can go to openlibrary.ecampusontario.ca. It's completely open, no sign-in required. Go nuts, download anything you want from that library website. Those are our open textbooks. Yeah, it's openlibrary.ecampus.ontario.ca. We'll show that today.
After.
Yeah, and we'll show it for sure.
I did have a question earlier. I'm sure most people are familiar with it, but I was wondering if you could explain the concept of badging that Laura had referred to.
All right, I might ask Joanne to speak to badging. Yeah, so the question is about, can you explain badging, open badging a little bit?
Was there a particular context that you were thinking about, or?
I'm wondering, like, because I'm not an instructor, I work in student advising, so I'm just wondering if this is a means where students are assessed, like in a non-evaluation, that it's like a traditional testing, like, I'm just wondering what it's all about.
Okay. Well, basically it's a digital recognition. So it's a recognition of a skill or an experience or membership or an affiliation that you might have that isn't captured within a typical credential. So the 8 partners, Sandbox partners that we have that are using open badges, really there's a diverse group of case studies, and are some that are using the co-curricular record, which I think kind of taps into what you were talking about. For example, I'm thinking of there's a really large project out of Ryerson, which is called Level Up, the Student Experience. So kind of things that they take part in outside of their disciplinary area, they can receive a badge for. So if they, for example, say they're interested, there's an entrepreneurial series of workshops on entrepreneurial skills, and the student attends 3 and then does a written reflection, they may get a badge that they have attended that and have done some sort of assessment. So then the badge earner has that badge to display on their LinkedIn. They can share it on social media. They can embed it in a portfolio. It's just a demonstration that they've done this additional skill, and they have this additional skill. And then the employer or whoever they want, who's actually looking at the badge, can see what they actually did. They can click on it. They'll be brought to a page. You might be familiar with Mozilla Backpack or some sort of badge sharing platform that will show all of the information, the criteria, what the student had to do, when it was issued, who issued it, if there was people that endorsed it perhaps.
So the badges are standardized then across the institution?
The badge is based on an open standard, so it's kind of like, I always think of when the internet was first born, because that was Jenny's story. Like, you had to use like Netscape Navigator to open some websites and sometimes Internet Explorer for others. But then they developed this open standard, so all browsers could open all websites. So it's the same with open badges. It was developed by Mozilla Foundation. So all open badges have that. I don't know if you remember the image I showed with all the criteria. They all have to have that information in them. Yeah, so it's a common language, yeah. But if you want to learn more, we can chat after.
Wondering if any of these resources can be available in the
Yes,
Question
so
is about
yes, the
French
question
language.
is, yeah, will we have these in French? We are partnered and meeting with our friends in Quebec, our associates at Francophone institutions here in Ontario to have these conversations, because it's an area, and our last round of funding last year for creation of open textbooks, we focused on Indigenous and French language as our highest priorities, because there's so many fewer resources there. So absolutely, it's a huge part of our conversation.
Yeah, I was going to just mention, sorry, the Ontario Extend program, the Educator Development Program, Ontario Extend, is also currently being translated, and it should be released like really soon, like within the next couple of weeks. Yeah. We'll have a complete French version for you to tap into. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about open resources and about textbooks. Is there other things there, images, videos, that sort of stuff? Does that stuff exist as well?
Yes, so we're going to talk today about open educational resource repositories, but we're also going to talk about websites like Pixabay and unsplash.com. Creative Commons has something they call Open Search, where you can search for audio files, video files, images, artworks. There's tons of multiple kinds of resources. It's not just open textbooks and education-related worksheets and quiz banks. There are beautiful, rich, artistic creations that people are sharing with an open license. So you'll see just things that you can easily add to your PowerPoints, and you've seen a lot of them in our PowerPoint, that they're public domain, essentially, just grab and go. Don't have to ask permission. Yeah, it's really exciting for that.
I think that's what the repository will have, is access to those learning objects that have been created. So it's great. And we always kind of, open textbooks are one solution, but but open textbooks are one solution. Like, for like a lot of people who teach courses, like teach a course digital literacy at Mac, and we use it's a compilation of OER rather than a textbook. So we've just kind of pieced it together so to make that as the resource for the class. Mm-hmm. We'll hopefully have the repository within the next year-ish. Hopefully, yeah.
Fortunately, there are repositories out there you can search right now. Yeah. We'll share a bunch of them with you. Yeah.
Actually, some videos on YouTube are licensed as Creative Commons as well. Mm-hmm. The challenge with YouTube that I was discussing with BC Festival Learning last night is that it's against their terms of service to download them. I mean, you can get around that, but technically the author of the video has given you permission to download it, remix it, do whatever you want with it.
But they don't have a button for download on YouTube.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming up from Toronto, for supporting this event. I really appreciate that you took the time out to come and do that, so thank you so much. I also wanted to thank Jessica and Marnie and Laura on their exceptionally hard work on putting this event together. Thank you so much. I know we're just starting and we have the whole rest of the day to go, but I just wanted to show my token of appreciation for your work on this event. So, thank you.